Victoria had everything a woman could dream of: brains, beauty, and a booming fashion business in Lagos. She married Mark, a charming man who once knelt in the middle of traffic just to propose to her. To everyone, they were the ideal couple. Victoria, the driven woman with dreams; Mark, the supportive husband who held her handbag with pride. But perfection is often a mask. And behind the public smiles, something darker simmered beneath. What Victoria didn't know was that her fairy tale was about to be shattered in a single moment, and that her husband's love had conditions hidden in shadows. One rainy evening, after a long day at work, Victoria got into her car to head home. The last message she sent Mark was, "See you soon, my love." But she never made it home. A truck ran a red light, crashing into her at full speed. The accident threw her car into a ditch. She woke up in a hospital bed, alive but blind. The doctor said the damage to her optic nerves might be permanent. She reached out blindly, calling Mark's name. He took her hand, crying, promising, "I'll never leave your side." But even in her darkness, she could feel a sudden shift, something cold in his voice that hadn't been there before. Victoria tried to adapt. She learned to walk with a cane, count her steps, and even recognize voices by sound. Mark helped at first, feeding her, bathing her, dressing her. But soon the warmth faded. He became impatient, distant, distracted. She could hear him whispering on the phone at night. He stopped sleeping in their bed. He avoided her touch. When she asked why, he simply said, "I'm tired. You wouldn't understand." And though she couldn't see his face, she could feel the lies piling up like dust on untouched furniture. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Months passed, and then came a glimmer of light, literally. A specialist in India reviewed Victoria's medical file and said her sight could be restored through surgery. Victoria was stunned, hopeful, and cautious. She told no one, not even Mark. If he was hiding something, she needed to see it with her own eyes. She confided in her sister, Kemi, the only person she truly trusted. Together, they traveled to India, keeping everything a secret. When the surgery was done and the bandages were finally removed, light rushed back into Victoria's world. She wept, not just tears of joy, but of awakening. She didn't return to surprise her husband. She returned to observe him, silently, secretly. And what she was about to discover would turn her stomach. Victoria returned home pretending the surgery failed. Mark welcomed her coldly, clearly disappointed she hadn't died or at least stayed helpless. She began watching him, hiding behind her silence. Now she saw everything. His late-night texts, sneaky calls, how he deleted chats when he thought she was asleep. She watched him send money to a woman named Sandra. She saw him copy her signature on documents. She even saw him scanning her ID and using it to open a joint account with someone else. Every smile he gave her felt like poison. But Victoria said nothing. She waited and collected everything. One night, Mark dressed in his finest and said he had a late business dinner. Victoria nodded, blindfolded herself with a scarf, and waited 10 minutes before following him. She trailed his Uber with her own driver, silent, determined, heart-pounding. He stopped at a luxury apartment. Victoria followed from a distance and watched him enter, laughing, holding a woman who wore her perfume. That woman was Sandra. Victoria's hands trembled. She had heard the name. Now she had a face. And that wasn't the worst part. Sandra was living in an apartment Victoria bought, in her name. The next morning, while Mark was away, Victoria returned to Sandra's apartment, quietly, with purpose. She slipped on gloves and began searching every drawer, every cabinet, every laptop. And then she found it, a brown envelope stuffed beneath a pile of designer bags. Inside were forged documents, land agreements, power of attorney papers, fake signatures that matched hers perfectly. Her vision blurred, not from blindness but rage. Mark had meticulously planned to strip her of everything she owned, properties, bank accounts, even her business registration. It wasn't just betrayal, it was an execution, and the weapon he used was trust. Victoria sat on the edge of the bed in silence, realizing this wasn't about love anymore, it was war. Victoria called her lawyer, quietly. She moved her money, froze suspicious accounts, and reported the fake documents. She placed cameras in her own home. She even left certain files exposed, traps, bait, for Mark to take the final step toward his downfall. Then she invited him to dinner. Her tone was warm, her voice soft. Mark walked in, surprised to see candles lit, his favorite meal on the table, and Victoria dressed in red. "You look different," he said. Victoria smiled sweetly. "Do I? Do?" Her eyes sparkled, but he didn't notice. He was too busy devouring the food she cooked and sealing his own fate. After dinner, she slid a thick folder across the table. Mark opened it, confused, then horrified. Inside were pictures, audio files, transfer documents, recordings, even screenshots of his messages with Sandra. His fork dropped. "Victoria, I can explain," he stammered. "You don't need to," she said calmly, "because I've already explained everything to the police. You were stealing from me, lying to me, plotting against me while I was blind. But guess what?" She stood slowly. "I'm not blind anymore, and I see who you truly are." Mark's mouth opened, but it was too late. Her words cut sharper than any blade. The next day, Mark was arrested, Sandra's accounts were investigated, the apartment was repossessed, and Victoria? She walked into her office, head high, eyes open, heart whole. Her staff clapped, her clients returned, her business soared. A few months later, she launched a foundation for women who had been betrayed, abandoned, or broken. She named it Sight Beyond Eyes. At the launch, she stood at the podium and said, "They thought I was helpless. They thought I was done. But even when I was blind, I saw more than they ever knew." And that day, her story became a torch for others still trapped in the dark. Thank you for taking the time to watch this powerful story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe, leave a comment, like, and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Your support means everything.